The north, cold, merciless, and biting. The wind howled across the battlements like a starving beast, scraping against the stone towers and shaking loose the frost that clung to every corner of the ancient fortress. Snow fell in slow, heavy flakes, each one a silent omen of the war crawling closer through the storm. Commander Martin, his long black hair whipping in the icy wind, stood atop the highest rampart. His eyes were fixed on the horizon. There, emerging through the swirling snow, was an army. They moved slowly, heavily, but with an unshakable power that made the earth tremble beneath their march. Shields glimmered faintly, spears rose like a dark forest. Their banners snapped violently against the winter gusts. It was a sight that could make weaker men drop to their knees. But Martin did not move. He drew a sharp breath, the cold burning through his lungs, and muttered to himself, Martin low, tense. So, the day has finally come. A horn echoed from below long, deep and warning. Soldiers on the walls gathered behind him, murmuring nervously as the enemy continued their relentless approach. Martin took one last look at the oncoming host, then turned, pushing open the heavy wooden door that led inside the keep. Inside the royal chambers, warmth hit him instantly, torches crackling, banners swaying gently from the heat. And standing near the tall arched window, her silhouette glowing against the pale winter light, was the Queen Elowen, a woman of breathtaking beauty, wrapped in an embroidered winter gown, her silver crown shimmering like fresh frost. She turned when she heard Martin enter. Elowen, your face tells me everything. They're close. Martin bowed his head respectfully. Martin, closer than we wished. My Queen, their vanguard is less than a league away. She stepped toward him, retightening her expression. Elara, and our scouts, did they confirm the size? Martin hesitated, just for a moment. Martin, too many. More than twice what we expected. The Queen closed her eyes for a heartbeat, steadying her fear. Elara, then we have no choice. Prepare the archers, ready the defenses. We hold until the allies arrive. Martin nodded. Martin, if they arrive. Her gaze hardened. They will. We sent the Raven for nights ago. They know our plight. A distant thunder rolled through the walls, the sound of enemy war drums beating in the snowy wastes. The Queen walked to the window, watching as dark shapes moved across the white fields below. Softly. This kingdom has survived 100 winters. It will survive one more. Martin allowed himself a small, grim smile. Martin, then I'll see to it personally. He turned sharply and strode out of the chamber, boots echoing through the stone corridors as he prepared to raise the castle. The mobilization bells rang from the towers. Soldiers spilled into the courtyards, and the fortress shook with sudden life. Archers rushed up the staircases, carrying quivers stuffed with frostbitten arrows. Ballista crews wiped snow from their siege engines, checking ropes and bolts. Shields were lined along the walls, torches lit in defiance of the encroaching darkness, and above them all, Martin stood again on the ramparts, winter swirling round him like a cloak. The enemy was closer now, close enough to see their formation clearly, close enough to hear their drums. Martin raised his hand, and the officers took their positions. Martin, archers, hold until my command. The snow thickened, covering the soldiers' cloaks, their helms, their eyelashes. The first arrow would mark the beginning of the siege, and in the far distance, beyond the frozen ridges, something moved. Not the enemy, not the storm. But hope. The enemy army crept closer with every passing minute, crawling through the snow like a dark tide meant to swallow the world whole. From the ramparts, the wind carried their war chants deep, guttural sounds echoing across the frozen valley. Snow spiraled in thick sheets, sometimes hiding them, sometimes revealing them again like a nightmare returning after you blink. Commander Martin stood at the highest vantage point, eyes scanning their formation with trained precision. He could see their heavy infantry breaking into columns, their shields raised above them to protect against arrows. He could see the siege towers rolling slowly across the ice, pulled by chains thicker than a man's arm. And at the very front, he spotted a colossal war drum, 3 men beating it in unison, their rhythm shaking the air like distant thunder. Marden clenched his jaw. Marden to his captain. They're ready for a full assault. Put every archer on the walls. Nobody rests now. Captain Rowan. Yes, Commander. The captain sprinted along the battlements, shouting orders. Archers lined up shoulder to shoulder, boots crunching into the frozen stone. Their breaths came out as clouds, trembling under the crushing weight of anticipation. Inside the castle, Queen Elowen walked through the halls with a regal calmness that almost hid the storm in her heart. Servants rushed past her carrying blankets, water, and supplies. Children huddled near their mothers, listening to the muffled roar outside. She finally reached the war chamber, a circular room lit by a large table of candles. Maps lay strewn across it, ink frozen in inkwells. Marden entered a few seconds later, removing his fur-lined gloves. Elara. How long? Marden, an hour, maybe less. The snow has slowed them, but not enough. The queen approached him, lowering her voice. Elara and the allies. Any sign? Marden shook his head. Marden, not yet. But the men believe they will come. Elara, and you. For the first time since morning, Marden let his guard drop. He exhaled, long and tired. Marden. Hope is a luxury I cannot afford. My queen. But I fight for this kingdom. And for you, whether allies come or not, I will hold these walls. Her eyes softened. Elara. Then I will stand with my people as well. Marden stepped closer, almost in protest. Marden, your place is here. Elara. Safe. Queen Elowen. There is no safety today, Marden. Only duty. A horn suddenly blustered through the chamber loud, sharp and panicked. Marden's eyes widened. Marden, they're in range. Return to the walls. Storm had grown vicious. The snow felt like shards of ice slashing across the soldiers' cheeks. Torches struggled to stay lit, their flames bending sideways. Marden pushed through the men and reached the front line. Marden, archers draw. 1,000 bows creaked. The sound was eerie, like bones breaking under pressure. The enemy had stopped marching. They were forming a massive shield wall, raising their heavy metal barricades above their heads. Marden knew what they were doing. Marden whispered. They're preparing for the first volley from the enemy's left flank. Dozens of large crossbows tilted upward, ballista-like weapons capable of shredding a man in half. Marden inhaled sharply. Marden, shields up. Everyone brace. The castle defenders crouched, lifting their shields as the enemy fired. A wave of massive arrows screamed through the air, slamming into the battlements with explosive force. Stone shattered, snow and dust erupted in violent bursts. 2 archers were thrown backward, their bodies vanishing into the courtyard below. Chaos erupted, but Marden rose to his feet, gripping the railing. Marden, archers. On my mark, prepare to return fire. More enemy projectiles cut through the blizzard, exploding against the walls. The queen stepped onto the battlements then, crook whipping wildly. La shouting through the wind. Marden, you need to fire back. He turned, shocked to see her there. Marden, I told you to stay inside. Elara, and I told you that I will stand with my people. Their argument ended when another enemy volley slammed into the towers, shaking the entire fortress. Marden growled. Marden, archers, loose. Thousands of arrows flew into the storm, darkening the sky for a moment. They cut through the snow, raining down upon the approaching army. Some found shields, some found armor, some found flesh. Screams rose from below, scattered by the wind. The enemy advances despite the losses. The enemy did not falter. Their siege towers creaked loudly as they rolled forward. Flaming projectiles were loaded into catapults. Drummers beat faster, louder, demanding blood. The soldiers on the walls felt the dread like a physical weight. Captain Rowan approached Martin, panting. Rowan, Commander, they're pushing the left flank harder. If we don't hold, Martin, we will hold. We must. He looked once more toward the horizon, toward the frozen ridges where the Allied banners should have appeared by now. Nothing. Only snow and despair. Martin gritted his teeth. Martin under his breath. Where are you? A sign in the distance, another volley. Another shake of the walls. Another scream swallowed by the blizzard. The defenders were fighting with every ounce of strength they had. But the enemy army was now close. Enough that Martin could see their war-paint. Then just as another enemy drumbeat exploded across the battlefield, the wind shifted. A new sound drifted from beyond the mountains. A faint echo. A horn. One single, distant horn, carrying through the snow like the voice of a forgotten god. Martin froze. The Queen's eyes widened. The soldiers looked up. Another horn. Closer, louder. And then through the blinding storm, a faint line of movement emerged. Banners, horses, armor glinting against the weak winter light. The Allied kingdom had arrived. The storm had reached its fiercest point, snow swirling in violent circles, wind screaming like a wounded creature. The enemy army was now less than a few hundred meters from the castle walls, a monstrous tide of steel and shadows moving with terrifying unity. The defenders struggled to stay steady on the icy stones. Some slipped, some bled, many prayed, and then cutting through the chaos like a blade of light, a horn sounded. Louder, clearer, closer. Martin's heart kicked in his chest. He rushed toward the edge of the rampart, wiping snow from his eyes as he peered into the blizzard. At first, all he saw was white chaos. Then shapes. Dark shapes. Moving fast. Breaking through the storm like a miracle carved in iron. The Allied kingdom's army had arrived. An entire cavalry unit thundered across the frozen ridge, their armor gleaming even under the dying winter sun. Behind them, infantry columns pushed through the snow with unwavering determination, banners snapping violently in the wind, announcing their arrival to both allies and enemies alike. The defenders gasped. Some even cried. Queen Elowen, her hair whipping in the storm, took a trembling breath. Elara whispering. They came. Martin's lips cold into a fierce, relieved smile. Martin, sound the bells. Let every man know we are not alone. The towers erupted with the metallic ring of massive bells, booming across the valley. The morale of the defenders soared. The enemy paused, their formation hesitating for the first time. Hope had returned to the battlefield. The Allies' descend. The light cavalry did not slow. They charged down the icy slope like a dark wave of steel. Lances angled forward, hooves pounding the frozen earth. Snow exploded beneath them with every step. Their general, a towering man in wolf pelt armor, raised his warhammer and bellowed, General Arthur, for the north, for the crown. His voice rolled across the valley like thunder. The enemy tried to reposition, forming a shield wall to block the charge. But the snow made the ground slick, and panic crept through their ranks as they realized they were about to be crushed between the castle and the Allies. The cavalry smashed into the enemy's flank with bone-breaking force. Shields shattered, spears splintered, men were thrown screaming into the snow. Martin stood atop the ramparts, eyes wide with admiration. Martin, Elara, they're splitting the formation. Elara, then this is our moment. Strike them while they're divided. Martin nodded and turned to his men. Martin utters, aim for their center lines. Support the Allies. Arrows filled the sky once more, forming dark trails that cut through the storm. They descended on the enemy with deadly precision, hitting the exposed ranks struggling against the cavalry's assault. The enemy captain roared orders, trying desperately to regain control. But the Allies were relentless. The castle under siege despite the Allied push. The enemy's main vanguard had reached the walls. Siege towers slammed into the battlements with earth-shaking impact. Ironclad ramps dropped open. Warriors surged out shouting, roaring, swinging axes and swords. Martin drew his blade. Martin towards. Defend the walls. The ramparts erupted into brutal close combat. Swords clashed violently. Shields bashed into ribs. Men slipped on blood-slick stone. Snow mixed with crimson. Martin cut through an enemy soldier, pivoted, and stabbed another. His movements were precise, cooled, efficient like a man who had lived his entire life on the battlefield. Queen Elowen, refusing to retreat, stood behind a line of royal guards, directing healers to the wounded. Elara, move them inside. Keep pressure on the bleeding. Nobody dies without a fight. Despite her orders, bodies fell. The enemy pressed harder, forcing the defenders back inch by inch. A massive warrior burst from the siege tower, brute with spiked armor and a war axe the size of a child. He charged Martin. Martin raised his sword, steady but exhausted. The brute swung. The impact sent a shock through Martin's, nearly knocking him off balance. He dodged the next blow, rolling across the icy stones. The brute roared. Martin grit his teeth and drove forward, plunging his blade under the brute's arm. The giant collapsed in a thunderous heap. Martin staggered to his feet, panting. Martin to himself. Not today. Not here. The enemy tries to break through on the battlefield below. The enemy regrouped, their commander clad in red and black armor raised a flaming sword, signaling a full charge. The enemy infantry surged forward in a final desperate push. Martin saw them. So did the Queen. So did every soldier on the walls. Ela shouting through the wind. Hold fast. Reinforcements are moments away, but moments felt like eternity as the enemy climbed the walls, using ladders, grappling hooks, anything they could. The defenders were overwhelmed. Captain Rowan screamed as he blocked a strike, slipping on the icy stones. Rowan, Martin, we can't keep this up. Martin looked over the edge. The Allied cavalry was fighting hard, but they were still too far to relieve the walls entirely. Then a sharp horn sounded. From the Allied side. Not the deep warning horn. Not the call to charge, but the horn of command. Signal. Martin recognized it instantly. A tactic between kingdoms older than the Queen herself. The Allies were reorganizing. Hammer and the anvil. General Arthur raised his hammer, pointing it toward the enemy's exposed rear. The Allied infantry roared and formed a tight spear formation, snow whipping round them as they lowered their weapons and advanced as one unstoppable force. Martin's eyes widened. Martin, Elara. They're preparing the hammer. The Queen gripped the battlement in anticipation. Elara, then we are the anvil. Martin nodded fiercely. Martin, all men to the front. Push them back. Force them toward the field. With renewed strength, the defenders surged forward, smashing into the enemy warriors on the walls. Archers dropped their bows and drew short blades. Guards swung their shields with brutal force. Slowly, painfully, the defenders pushed the enemy back toward the siege towers and ladders. Below, the Allied infantry accelerated, their formation unbreakable as they speared through the enemy center. The enemy commander turned too late. The Allied cavalry hit from the left. The Allied infantry hit from the front. And the defenders pressed from above. The enemy was crushed between them. Cries filled the battlefield. Arms splintered. Shields shattered. Men were trampled beneath iron boots. It was the turning point. It was the moment the tide broke. The enemy collapses. Enemy's front line faltered. Then cracked. Then shattered. Completely. Warriors began to flee, slipping on the snow as they ran. The enemy commander tried to rally them, but an allied lancer struck him down. His flaming sword extinguished in the snow. The enemy army crumbled. Soldiers dropped their weapons. Some begged for mercy. Others simply vanished into the storm. The siege towers burned. The catapults were overturned. The war drums fell silent. Only the storm remained soft, quiet, peaceful again. Martin lowered his sword. Chest heaving. Queen Elowen stepped beside him, breath visible in the freezing air. Elowen, is it truly over? Martin looked at the battlefield, snow-stained with the cost of survival. Martin, not yet. He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. But we have won the day. The bells rang in triumph. The Allies cheered, and for the first time in days, the people of the North breathed without fear. Snow hammered the stone battlements like a living thing, each gust of wind howling through the arrow slits with a pitch that sounded almost human. The sun was sinking behind the distant, ice-topped mountains, bleeding orange light across the frozen valley where the enemy vanguard was now firmly entrenched. Fires burned in their camp, circles of red against a world of blue and white. Commander Martin strode along the ramparts, boots crunching on frost. His men straightened when he passed. Even the most exhausted archers forced themselves to stand a little taller. He needed that. Morale was as vital as steel. Below, the siege engines continued their brutal rhythm. Gun crack. A trebuchet stone slammed into the outer wall, spraying shards of ice. Lord Commander, Captain Owen joined him, face flushed from running. They're assembling rams and shields. They'll push for the gate before dawn. Martin studied the mass of bodies gathering below, heavy infantry forming up in blocks, their shields glinting under the dying light. Horns bled like the calls of ancient beasts. They're preparing their killing blow. Martin muttered, they want our walls broken before our allies arrive. If they arrive at all, Owen said softly. Martin shot him a hard stare. They will. But a whisper of doubt tried to coil through him. The storm had grown worse, visibility shrinking. If the allied host was out there, they were fighting the weather as well as the terrain. Get the heavy crossbows in place. Martin ordered, tell the engineers to load firepots. If they push rams through that gate, we'll burn half their front line. Owen nodded and hurried off. Inside the keep, Queen Elowen was pacing the council chamber when Martin entered. Torches flickered in their brackets, coughing shadows across maps and markers spread over the central table. You look tired, she said immediately. He admitted. But the men don't need to see that. Elowen approached him, her cloak whispering across the stone floor. Reports, the enemy plans to strike the gate before dawn. They want the castle before any reinforcements can reach us. Her jaw clenched. We cannot lose the north. If this fortress falls, everything south of here will follow. Martin hesitated. Should he give her reassurance or truth? He chose both. We will hold as long as needed, he said. Our walls are strong, our men are stronger, and our allies promised they would not abandon us. The Queen's eyes softened. And if they do not come? Martin looked at her, really looked at her. She was young, far too young to be fighting a war of extinction, but she held herself with the strength of a seasoned monarch. Then, Martin said quietly, we stand alone, and we make these walls their tomb. Elowen's breath trembled, but only for a moment. She straightened, then prepare everything. If the gate falls, we fall back to the inner courtyard. I'll be there with the healers. Martin nodded, and I at the front. Nightfall. The storm deepens, snow fell heavier, blanketing the world in a suffocating light. Torches barely illuminated the battlements. The enemy torches flickered like ghosts through the storm. But their war horns cut through clearly. They're advancing. The lookout shouted. Martin raised his arm. Archers on the wall. Hundreds of bowstrings drew back. Their breath rose in white clouds as the enemy surged forward under shield cover. Loose. The sky darkened with arrows. Screams echoed across the field, some swallowed by the wind. But the enemy kept marching slow. Disciplined, relentless, again. Another volley, another dot, but the shield wall pressed on, step by heavy step, until the front ranks were at the edge of the frozen moat. Siege ladders began rising like skeletal limbs via the pots. Martin commanded dot engineers lit and hurled burning clay jars, shattering them across the shields. Fire crawled, hissed, and sputtered in the snow, but it disrupted their formation long enough for another wave of arrows to tear gaps through their ranks. Still they advanced. The enemy ran, covered by iron plating, rolled through the storm toward the gate. Thud. The walls shook. Thud. Snow rained down from the battlements. Thud. The gate groaned under the pressure. Martin slammed his fist on the parapet. Where are they? Where are the allies? As if in answer, a horn sounded in the far distance. Low, powerful. Echoing over the mountains, the men froze. Another horn replied closer. Then another. Martin stepped to the edge of the wall, squinting into the white void. Torches, shine them north. Soldiers lit signal torches and held them up high. And they're just barely visible through the roaring snow-dark shapes moved along the ridge. Dozens, hundreds, thousands, standards rose into view, the banner of the kingdom of Thalion, their ancient allies. They came. Martin whispered. A wave of cheers erupted along the wall, lifting the spirits of every man present. Martin's expression hardened. Men of the north, he roared, our brothers have come. The defenders roared back, arrows flying with doubled fury as the enemy hesitated, glancing behind them toward the approaching host. True hope returned to the icy fortress. The battle was shifting. The storm had grown into a monstrous, howling titan. Snow swirled in violent spirals, half blinding both armies. Torches whipped in the wind. I stung exposed skin like knives. But on the northern ridge, through the blizzard's white fury, the Thalion allied host was fully visible. At last, thousands of riders, their armor shimmering with frost, their banners snapping like wings of steel. Commander Martin felt a surge of fire in his chest. They came. He whispered again, this time with absolute, blazing certainty. The enemy commander below clearly saw it too. Horns blared frantically as the besieging army attempted to turn its formation, dividing forces between the fortress and the approaching reinforcements. Captain Owen. Martin shouted, signal the Queen, tell her the allies are with us, and prepare the gates when they engage the enemy's flank. We charge. Owen blinked, stunned. We, sir. You mean open the gates? Martin repeated. We strike from within while Thalion strikes from without. We crush them between us. Owen saluted sharply. Yes, Commander. Inside the castle, the Queen's stand. Queen Elowen stood among the wounded in the great hall, torchlight lighting her pale hair like threads of gold. When the messenger burst in, breathless, her hands froze mid-bandage. Your Majesty, our allies have reached the ridge. Commander Martin prepares to countercharge. Relief washed over her face, but only for a single heartbeat. Then she straightened, fierce as iron. Very well. Ready the healers. Ready every last soldier able to stand. If Martin is leading the charge, then we hold this ground behind him. The Queen of the North did not hide behind her walls. She anchored them. The enemy buckles from the battlements. Martin watched the allied army descend the ridge like an avalanche of steel. War cries thundered through the valley. Thalion. Their cavalry smashed into the enemy's flank with terrifying force, spears splintering, shields shattering, bodies colliding in a storm of violence. The besieging army collapsed inward, desperately trying to reform lines in the blizzard. This was the moment. Open the gates. Martin roared. Heavy chains rattled. The iron-bound oak doors groaned. Snow and wind blustered through as the gates parted. Men of the Northwood. Martin drew his sword, its blade catching a flash of lightning white snow, and charged. Hundreds followed footmen, knights, shield bearers, archers firing while running. A wave of defenders poured into the field, slamming into the enemy's front. The clashed battlefield became chaos incarnate, steel on steel. Screams swallowed by wind, bodies falling on frozen earth. Martin cut through a line of armored infantry, his breath steaming like smoke. A war hammer swung at him. He ducked, buried his sword in the attacker's ribs, and pushed forward. His men formed a wedge behind him, driving into the heart of the enemy formation. Then, through the chaos, he spotted the enemy commander, a massive warrior in blackened plate, barking orders, forcing his troops to hold the line between the two converging armies. Martin pointed. "With me." Their commander falls, they all fall. He charged. The enemy commander saw him coming and met him head-on, their blades colliding with a crack like thunder. The force nearly numbed Martin's arm. They circled each other amid the blizzard, sparks flying as steel scraped steel. The enemy swung in a brutal arc. Martin blocked, staggered, regained footing. Another strike. Martin slipped past the blade and slashed across the man's shoulder. The commander roared and lunged. Martin sidestepped and drove his sword deep between the plates of a man's armor. The black-armored giant fell to his knees, then toppled into the snow. For a heartbeat everything went silent. Then the enemy's front line buckled, then collapsed, then broke. Soldiers fled in every direction, dropping shields, abandoning siege engines, disappearing into the storm. Martin stood panting, sword lowered, as the combined army of the North and Thalion roared in triumph around him. After the storm hours later, the blizzard calmed to a gentle drifting snow. Fires were extinguished, bodies were gathered, survivors tended. The once besieged fortress stood proud and unbroken. Queen Elowen walked through the courtyard, her boots sinking softly into the snow, until she reached Martin, bloodied, exhausted, leaning on his sword like a pillar. "You did it," she said. He shook his head. "We did it, all of us. You, the men, and our allies." At the gates, the Thalion commander approached and clasped Martin's arm. "You held the North long enough for us to reach you," he said. "No greater honor." Martin almost smiled. "Then let this alliance stand for 1,000 more winters." Queen Elowen looked toward the horizon, where dawn began to break through the gray. "Our kingdom survives another night," she whispered. "And tomorrow we rebuild." Martin sheathed his sword. "Tomorrow, Your Majesty, we celebrate. Tonight, the North sleeps safe." Snow fell lightly, peacefully, no longer the storm of war, but the quiet of a world saved. And under the first morning light, the fortress stood tall, its banners waving triumphantly in the winter breeze.